It is my honor to welcome the Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Charlie Baker.
Thanks, Jonathan, and thanks to President Meehan and Chancellor Maloney and the team from UMass Lowell for sponsoring us here today. Jonathan, I think Christmas was probably where are you? I think Christmas was probably the day this thing got signed. Now we're just in the process of starting to open some of the packages. And I do want to say how much I appreciate the history lesson that Marty Meehan talked about with respect to who the Rourke Bridge is named after. I was the keynote speaker a few years ago at one of my kids' high school graduations, and it was held at Bloxage Field in Swampscott. Now, everybody in Swampscott knows where Bloxage Field is, and they know that it's called Bloxage Field. But if you were to take a survey about whether or not people knew who Bloxage was, well, let's just say you wouldn't have gotten a lot of answers on that one. And it was John Enos Bloxage who died 2 months before the end of World War I in 1913. He was a kid from Swampscott, enlisted in the service, served in several important battles, and died just before it would have been time to come home. And that led me to looking at every single name of every single intersection in the town of Swampscott and doing my own. And by the way, this is not hard anymore. You can find them all right here, okay? And I Googled every single one to figure out who they were and what their story was. And I think sometimes in the midst of time, that part of it gets lost and it just becomes the Rourke Bridge. And I think I'm hoping that because of this legislation and the hard work that was done by so many, which I'll talk about in a second, we will have lots of opportunities to do lots of history projects on the names of those who currently reside on a whole bunch of bridges we'll be repairing, but it will also probably give us some opportunities to come up with some new names on some of the work that gets done over the next 5 years on many projects that are associated with this particular legislation. Today we're talking about how we plan to spend $9.5 billion from the federal bipartisan infrastructure law in roadway, bridges, public transportation, and environmental infrastructure. I particularly like that word, environmental infrastructure. Most folks know that that is the one piece of infrastructure that tends to get lost in a lot of these conversations, and I give huge credit to the team in DC and to the folks there for including that kind of infrastructure as part of this effort. I especially want to thank House Ways and Means Chair Richie Neal for his leadership on this issue, along with our senators and the rest of the members of our delegation. And, and Congresswoman Trahan has been, let's just say, aggressive. And not just through this process, but on many other issues that involve her congressional district as well. And I'm very glad you're here to take a bow, because you earn it every single day on behalf of the people you serve here. This will make our transportation system more reliable and safer. It will deliver billions of dollars into Massachusetts to help upgrade roads, bridges, and our public transportation system over the next 5 years. And these investments will build on over $18 billion that we've already invested over the past 7 years in transportation projects, and about $1.2 billion we've invested in climate mitigation efforts as well. We've invested about $9.3 billion in roads and bridges, about $7.9 billion in the MBTA, and about $790 million in rail and RTA projects over the past 7 years. Many of these investments have been transformational. That's part of what makes this particular legislation so important, because it gives us additional opportunities to reduce congestion, modernize existing assets, and expand and improve service and access across the entire Commonwealth. With the funding from this bill, we can build investments that will further improve infrastructure, as John Gulliver said, literally from one end of the Commonwealth to the other and to every corner. We expect to receive about $9.5 billion in total. $5.4 billion of that will be in highway funding, $2.2 billion will be in MBTA funding, $990 million will go to the RTAs, and about $1.4 billion is there for infrastructure projects. And the one asterisk I would put on this is we are going to figure out some way to take our state capital assets and our state capital dollars and some of the ARPA money that's been appropriated by the legislature to compound some of the opportunities that are associated with a lot of these resources. There's going to be a lot of money going to work for the people of Massachusetts over the course of the next couple of years. In addition to that, we'll also have a chance to compete for what I would consider to be at least, if not more than our fair share of the $110 billion that's available to all 50 states for discretionary and competitive programs. We've been laying the groundwork to apply for many of these competitive funds, and we'll be ready to do so once the feds get around to releasing guidance on it, and we hustle with our colleagues in the state legislature to pass a bond bill. Much of the funding from the so-called BIL reauthorizes existing funding for that MassDOT and the MBTA can expect to receive each year, but we're also set to receive new funding as well for many other transportation projects. MassDOT plans to combine bridge funding from the BIL with our state next generation bridge program to invest about $3 billion in bridges over the next 5 years. Have we ever put that much money to work over a 5-year period on bridges?
No, that's a lot.
First time ever. MassDOT has already begun this process by initiating over 146 bridge repair or replacement projects on 181 bridge structures across the Commonwealth, and the Rourke Bridge, obviously, which, as everybody who's standing up here knows, was built as a temporary structure in about 1983. You all up here have a very interesting definition of the word temporary. So this is probably what we would consider to be long overdue. It's been on our radar for quite a while. There's been a lot of pre-work done on it. And for us, this is, in some ways, the perfect project and the perfect place to kick off what we expect and anticipate will be an enormous amount of activity over the course of the next 10 or 12 months. And it's this $170 million project will replace the existing temporary bridge with an expanded and permanent bridge that will be there hopefully for a very long time, but no longer than it's supposed to be there. And it's obviously a hugely important crossing to Lowell, and we're glad to be able to move this project forward. Lieutenant Governor Polito will also speak about a new bridge program that we've worked with our colleagues in state government on here in the legislature, which will be on top of some of the stuff we're talking about generally. With respect to the T, they're going to get about $2.2 billion over the next 5 years, and that will fund about $1.6 billion in spending that's already programmed, and another $600 million for new projects. And with those funds, they plan to invest in new vehicles, make signal upgrades, and facility improvements across their system. And that'll include about $850 million for vehicle investments, $428 million for signal and system upgrades. That's on top of we made about $1 billion in signal and system upgrades already. That is actually one of the, and I apologize for even bringing this up, but that $1 billion we've spent on signal, switch, system, electronics, it's completely invisible. No one ever sees it. It's one of the reasons why no one in public life ever invests any money in it, because you get no credit for it, even though it's a lot of dough. Most of the stuff we replaced was 20, 30, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years old, and didn't work very well. And that was an investment that will carry the system forward. For decades, it was the right thing to do, and we got absolutely Zippo credit for it. But I'm okay with that.
Still the most popular governor.
The RTAs are going to receive about $591 million over the next 5 years, and they can use that to fund fleet upgrades and facility and system modernizations as well. We also expect to receive, about $1.4 billion in both formula and discretionary funding for environmental projects, and almost all of that is going to go toward what we would describe as new programs. There are a lot of tremendous opportunities to take state resources, combine that with the federal stuff, throw some ARPA money into the mix, and we can do some amazing things. You know, think Merrimack River, okay? I mean, there's a lot of really cool projects we can do here. And the final thing I'll just say, we're awaiting further guidance from the feds on sort of the rules of the game for a lot of this, but you can count that the minute they put out the rules associated with how a lot of this works, we will move very quickly to put it to work for the people here in Massachusetts. And that transportation bill will probably get filed as soon as we get some sense from the feds about how the rules on some of this work. So you should expect that to land in front of our colleagues in the legislature, I would say sometime in the coming weeks. This is a tremendous opportunity for us. We should take full advantage of it. And again, I just want to thank the delegation for all of their really heavy lifting on getting this done. I personally love the fact that it is a bipartisan infrastructure law. We need more of those. And I would just close by saying that this really is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, and we here in Massachusetts need to do everything we can to take full advantage of it. And thanks again for hosting us here at UMass Lowell.
All right, so I know our next speaker is excited about infrastructure. She comes from a family of construction, and she knows firsthand how these projects can make a real difference for a community. Tip O'Neill said, all politics are local. Well, so is all transportation and many other critical services. And for the past 7 years, our speaker has tirelessly worked with communities, listening to their needs in their neighborhoods and advocating for the resources that they need. This relationship has led to a generational investment in communities, both directly and through many of our new grant programs. Please welcome Lieutenant Governor Karyn Polito.
Thank you. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Jonathan. I just want to give a big shout out to Mass Highway, Mass DOT, not only navigating storms and helping us through those moments, but also for your tremendous leadership and your abilities, your capabilities through the districts and through the central office there to really put these dollars to work in the communities. You've done an outstanding job, and there's no doubt you are up for this task. Thank you. So happy to be here in Lowell, and just earlier today we were at UTEC for incredible program that they obviously are successful at in putting dollars to work to change people's lives. And it's great to be here at the University of Lowell for this important investment in places and infrastructure that also not only have an incredible impact on community, but on the quality of life for people in the community. And I just want to say a shout out to Mary Burns, thank you, President Meehan, and thank you to the delegation of local leadership on the council, to the state delegation, and to Congressman Trahan. Thank you so much, all of you. The one thing I hope you always know, coming to Lowell is a treat. You feel our love, but we always have felt your love. And one of the assets that you have here is not only your ability to focus on what your needs are and get stuff done, but you are able to do that because you collaborate, all of you, city, state, federal leaders working together, really focusing on your goals is a true asset of this community, and there's no doubt you will always, always have that. Keep working at that. All right, so as the governor said, I'm going to highlight a few of the things because they're worth repeating and they're important details. Receiving $5.4 billion over the next 5 years for road and bridge projects. And the ability for us, because we're particularly skilled at making sure that we're stacking up these grants, taking federal grants, matching up state dollars. Of course, you have local dollars that can also go into the mix and really see great things happen. So being able to stack the state, local, and state, federal, and perhaps local, Eileen, for you to decide, then you can really get some great stuff done. Our administration plans to combine the new bridge funding, as the governor said, with the next generation bridge program. So that's 5.4 plus the $3 billion that will reach over 150 bridges throughout the Commonwealth. And every bridge makes a difference. Every bridge matters. And yes, every bridge is named after someone important because rightfully so, you want to highlight that person's commitment to community. But in every case, every bridge is a connection point. And it's a connection point for people to get from one place to the other, whether it's for jobs and expanding your local economy, or for emergency vehicles to get from A to B quickly and efficiently, or to allow, in this case, a 1983 temporary bridge, 2 lanes, the ability to upgrade it to multiple lanes, connecting really important places in this community to more economic opportunity and make it accessible for all people, pedestrians, walkers, people with different abilities to get from one place to another is really a huge opportunity, and it will become now a reality. So congratulations to all of you. So, since 2015, our administration has provided $178 million in grants for municipal transportation projects, in addition to over $1.5 billion invested through Chapter 90. Chapter 90 is the program, it's the bread and butter program that literally puts the dollars into local government. But we've also gone a step further through Mass Highway and Mass DOT, listening to municipal officials about where the gaps are. Where do the Chapter 90 funds just don't go far enough to get to important infrastructure? And through this relationship, we've created new programs to fill those gaps. This is perhaps one of my favorite programs, and I know yours too, Governor. And this is the Municipal Small Bridge Program. Now, for many of you, that might not sound really exciting, but for us, it's really exciting. Because if you think about a small community, any community, that it sees a bridge connection go out of use, that's very disruptive for emergency, public safety, and all reasons. So it's really critically important that we see a program like this continue. And since the beginning of our administration, we've invested $50 million for 117 projects in 100 communities throughout the Commonwealth. And with this relaunch, Mass DOT will provide $95 million over the next 5 years to see more of those local bridges fixed and repaired and updated. So that will live on for all of you local officials and the state delegations throughout our state to see that those dollars be put to the right uses. And the application process begins today with submissions due to MassDOT by April 1. So obviously the municipalities will be all over that in no time. Let me just finally say thank you again for working so hard together, but I also just want to close by thanking Congresswoman Trahan for your leadership. Obviously a very effective voice in Washington, advocating for the needs for programs like this to work. Not only does that benefit the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, but every state in the country. But what I love about Congresswoman Trahan is she's grounded in her community, and she's effective in Washington because she understands what the priorities and needs are for the people here at home. And that is one thing you obviously take to heart, and that is clearly why we see this opportunity today. Congratulations to you.